I'm a boat builder from the Cotswolds in the UK, and I'm building a boat called Temptress, designed by Michel Berrier and kitted by myself to be built utilising the latest in CAD design, CNC cutting and modern epoxy wood construction. Now, in the previous video, I laminated and built the keel section of the boat. In this video, I'm going to be taking it back out of the boat again and shaping that, taking a load of markings and references off the boat and off the framing to get the shape of the keel, do most of the shaping off of that on the bench, and then put it back in place and end up with something like what you're looking at next to me here. Now, first of all, apologies that there's been a bit of a break in the series. I've been really busy over the last few weeks, almost over a month actually. I've been teaching a course down in Lyme Regis. You may have seen some of the videos there. So I spent 2 weeks down at the Boatbuilding Academy in Lyme Regis teaching a group of 6 students how to build a little plywood skiff in 10 days. That was the first time I've run the course. It went really well. It was a great load of fun. And we actually managed to launch the boat on the final day of the course, which is fantastic considering that we started with a pile of wood on day 1. So there'll be a separate video coming out about that, tell you a little bit about the boat and also about the course and how it went and everything. And more info coming on that. But yeah, apologies that created a little bit of a break in the series because I had a couple of weeks preparing for the course and then 2 weeks teaching it. But now I'm back on Temptress and cracking on, and that's been really nice to get back to. So let's get on with it. The first thing I'm going to do is transpose some marks from the boat onto the keel so that I can shape it. So there are a handful of different ways in which I can get the information from the boat onto the keel in order to be able to shape it off the boat. First of all, I'm just cleaning up the ends of some of these frames here that have got epoxy on them, and then I'm going to run a nice smooth and fair batten along the edge of the keel, which is going to give me the profile for the outer edge here. So you can see I've just used one of my topside battens made from larch, very nice and fair and even, which is going to give me a good fair curve along the boat. So I've fixed that along the edge there, sitting that down on the bottom faces of the frames, and then I've marked that line onto the edge of the keel. In the aft section of the boat, all of this that is the planing surface is pretty much, well in fact it is exactly dead straight from around about frame 9 aft. So I've used a 6-foot straight edge for this, which has also just allowed me to transpose those lines outwards where the keel kind of expands in width. And there you can see the line on the edge of the keel that's going to give me that curvature. So that's one of the lines that I'm going to work down to when I shape the keel. Then I can transpose the lines of each of the frames at each frame station up and through the keel, and you can see that I'm using a tenon saw to do this. So I'm just cutting into the excess material on the keel, and I'm just sighting down the line of the teeth on the saw blade until I get them nice and collinear to the line of the bottom of the frame. So you can see I'm just using that to project the frame line up and on through the keel. I'm calling it the keel here, but this is actually technically a Keelson because this is inside the boat and not on the outside, so forgive me for my incorrect terminology there. You can see I'm even doing that right down aft where this timber gets really quite wide, but I'm still able to project that on through with a surprising amount of accuracy using the bottom edge of that tenon saw. Now right up forward things get a little bit more steeply angled. As you can see, I haven't got quite enough depth with my saw to be able to cut right the way through, and as you'll see later on in the video as well, that's a little bit difficult to accurately transpose those lines, so I just do it roughly in the forward end for now. I can then trim off the excess that's sticking out through the transom for the aft end of the Keelson, which I don't really need anymore. Then it's back out with this giant timber again, and onto the bench. This is going to be a lot easier for me to shape this on the bench, certainly for the initial roughing operations. I'll do the finer shaping on the boat, but this is going to be a lot easier to rough out for now on the bench. So I'm going to start out with the power planer. There's quite a lot of material to remove here in certain areas, certainly on the outer edges of the keel here in the aft section. So roughing those off with the power plane is just going to get me somewhere a lot closer, a lot quicker. So I tend to start out with this set on the 2mm depth. So this will be taking 2mm per pass, and I do some really rough cuts to get myself somewhere close and start to bring things down to the line. You'll see that I'll go over to hand planes in a minute, but I'll start off on the 2mm setting on the power planer, and then once I get a little bit closer and I want to start to not rip quite so much material off, I'll dial that down to the 1mm setting, and then you can kind of skim back and forth with that planer and bring material down very quickly but a little bit more accurately, but you still don't have the same kind of feel that you do with a hand plane, so ultimately it'll get finished with that. So then it's back over to my grandfather's jointer plane again, getting that back set up. Certainly for the aft section of the keel, as I mentioned, this is dead straight here from frame 9 right back to the transom, so I want to try and maintain that straightness wherever possible, and a good long jointing plane is a good way to do that. Then I can go over to the 5.5 plane, which is nice and wide. It's fairly long as well, so I can use this for a combination of things, putting bevels on stuff, but also keeping an eye on how straight things are at the same time. You also get just a little bit more control with these more modern types of planes, because the sort of position in hands is a little bit lower down than it is with the big wooden plane. Okay, so I just set about starting to shape the keel, and forgot to actually do a segment to tell you what's going on here. So obviously I've transposed these lines here through from each of the frames, and you can see that the bottom edge of that saw just follows that frame line on up through the keel, and that's where we're looking to come down to. So as I start to shape this, I'm going to bring this down basically until these little lines disappear, and then I should be on the right track for the frames. I might just leave a little bit of them, but they're a pretty accurate guide as to where I need to get to. And I've also got that pencil line along the outside there as another verification, and certainly to help me fill in the bits in between the frame stations. Daisy's ready to go home. Yeah, before I do too much shaping, I thought I'd just show you how that varies throughout the boat. So right back here at the aft section, these lines come all the way through because we've got loads of material in the keel here. So I'll just shape this and I'll balance this. You can see I'm a little bit heavy on this side now, so we'll come back over, keep that centered in the middle, and I'll take that down until those lines disappear. Up forward, if you may remember from the previous video where I laminated the keel, I said that I didn't have quite enough material on the forward end, and you can see that that is evident here with these slots. So where these slots will join up together and come to the middle, we've got enough material, but as we come further forward, you can see that they're missing, which indicates that there isn't quite enough timber in the keel there, and especially on this one, look. If I put the saw into that slot, you can see where the line of that frame is going to fall, and you can clearly see that we haven't got enough timber in the middle there. And that's not a problem. I knew that was going to happen anyway, but this is just an interesting
insight, because you can see it reflected in those notches there, and then as we get up nice and steep forward, you can see there's plenty of crossover, so we've got loads of material there. So before I set about shaping the whole thing, I thought I'd show you that, but back to the hand plane work, and let's get this at least roughly shaped. So I'll show you what's going on with the keel for two reasons really. It's a good opportunity to highlight what I'm looking at as I work, but also allows me to catch my breath and have a little bit of a rest from planing, because it's pretty heavy going work. So I've got a number of visual indicators going on here as I'm starting to take this down and shape it. I'll show you a little bit of what I'm looking at. So you can see I've got the line along the outside here. So that's keeping my outer edge to the correct height, nice and fair, and you can also see it's kind of filling in the gaps in between these notches that I've cut. The notches, as you can see, are a pretty accurate representation of a frame at each station. You can see I've just got to the bottom of that line there, so I want to stop on the inside, got a touch more material to come off on the outside. Some of the notches are still a little bit deeper, but these give a pretty good indication of balance. I've also got the centre line, which I'm pretty much just doing visually actually, and you can see as this comes to one side or another, so it's looking pretty central there, but as we come up to let's have a look a bit further up, you can see it's a little bit further over to this side, which indicates that there's more material to come off either in this direction, take this middle part down, or generally this whole side's got to come down a little bit more. And judging which one of those it is really just a combination of looking at that notch, looking at the outer line, looking at the centre line. And you can see that waves quite heavily over to this side, on this side, so this one's a little bit heavy. Then we'll look at the outside, a little bit of material to come off of there still. Pretty close on that side, so it's a case of sort of balancing all of those as I take this down with the hand plane. Obviously I rough this off with the electric plane first just to get me somewhere close, but there's not a great deal of control with that, so when I go over to the hand plane I can really start to kind of balance this. I want to end up with this centre line nice and straight right down the middle. You can see it's not too bad, to be honest. And you can be pretty accurate just doing all of this by eye. The other thing of course that I've got as an indicator is the lamination lines. These are very even lines throughout the stack of the keel. And these tell their own story as well, similar to the way that when you shape a scarf on plywood you can see what the lines are telling you. And you can see here, this one's really quite thin on the outside in comparison to this one, so that would indicate to me that I've taken more material off there. And if we look at the outside line, that's fairly close. Around this side, still got a fair amount to come down, so the story that those lamination lines are telling me also matches what's on the outside, which is good. And again, we'll end up with these nice and evenly balanced all the way throughout the keel when we shape it. Then I'll come up a bit further forward, and you can see this is the section here where this flat is going to start to appear, so I'm pretty close on this side in my notches and in my lines in between, and I haven't done as much work on this side yet, so you can see this notch is notably a lot deeper still than this one, so there's more material to come off this side. And then I've done next to no shaping up forward as well, so I'm going to progressively work forward with that. So that's just a bit of a look at what I'm looking at. I'm doing all of this just by eye really, and taking it down somewhere close, but there's plenty of indicators going on within this to keep me on track and make sure that I don't go too far. What I don't want to be doing is getting rid of these notches as soon as these disappear completely. To be honest, I've gone too far, so I don't want to go that far. Probably this one that I showed you here. You can see it's really shallow and it's just disappeared at the tip there, so definitely don't want to take any more material off than that, and I'll do the final little fettle when it's back up and in place on the boat. So that's what we're looking at. Plenty to go with, and now I've caught my breath again, let's get back on with planing. Okay, so I'm getting pretty close now. You can see I'm just a little touch off my pencil line, and to be honest, that pencil line is probably a bit low because it's taken from the underside of the batten that I used to mark it, so I don't really want to get rid of that pencil line completely. All the little saw marks are looking pretty shallow and pretty even. You can see here that just by catching the light, the centre line of that keel shape is pretty straight for most of that. You can see that these laminations are largely very similar. A little bit of variation along the keel, but not too much. And yeah, I'm about maintaining that same kind of distance off that line on the side all the way down. You can see when we cut through the scarves, look, these look nice and even. You can see the shape of that nibbed scarf coming through now that we're shaping it. You can see this little slither where I need the additional material. You can see this little flat section here that's just left. It's just a little ellipse, so you can see it wasn't really worth putting a whole lamination on. This is probably its widest point, just to fill in that bit. So it goes to kind of nothing here, and then this has got quite a lot more to come off as it sort of shapes up into the stem forward. But I think I'm going to do that on the boat because I run out of energy. No, run out of sort of accurate information. Like this sideline, I couldn't very accurately mark that as we came forward onto frame one. So I'm going to shape that on the boat, and I'll land some timbers into it that will give me a bit more of an accurate reference. So we're pretty close now. That is close enough for me to drop this back into the boat and do the last bit of shaping with it in place. But you can see we're pretty good. Hopefully it'll be quite a lot lighter now as well. Because yeah, there's a lot of shavings about on the floor. Quite a bit of timber's come off of it. We've got probably 2/3 of a bin full of sawdust shavings from the planer. So there we go. Let's get it lifted back into place and see how it looks.
I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that is helping to support this project through Patreon. It makes a real big difference to me because I'm trying to self-fund this entire boat build, and it's also pretty much taking the place of most of the paid work that I do within my shop. That means it's quite a difficult thing to make happen at times, so I really appreciate the extra monthly amount that people are able to put towards a project. If you'd like to support it on Patreon, then check that out. You can get early access to these videos, you can get merch for various different tiers on Patreon, you can get discounts on boat plans and some behind the scenes footage of what else is going on which you don't get to see on YouTube. So any support that you're able to give through that, I would greatly appreciate it. That's really going to help me to push this project forward and to continue making videos like this to show to you guys. So it's in. It's looking pretty damn close actually. I'm quite pleased with that. You can see we're landing on all those frames quite nicely. All the way down, and you sort of get a different feel for the shape of the hull coming to life now as well. Now you can kind of see that centre line down the keel. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's a case of kind of catching it in the light really. Yeah, it looks good. I'm pleased with that. That is certainly close enough. As you'll have probably seen, you know, there's a bit of trimming work to still do on these stringers, so they're going to need shaping in place, and the keel's actually quite a lot closer than the stringers are, so whatever's left there is certainly within trimming distance in place. You can see up forward, kind of see what I'm talking about really with not having as much information, because it becomes difficult to scribe this outer line accurately down and forward onto that frame. I'm going to chop all of this off actually because we've got way more than we need there, but I'll be able to start to land some timbers diagonally from here across and up onto the keel, follow that, project that line from the stem on up and sort of work all that down. So I'll get started on that in just a second. I can't properly land any bottom planking just yet because these stringers need to come down a touch, but I've got a plank here. Now obviously I'm going to plank this diagonally, but I can still just offer up a plank there in place anyway, and then take a look up inside and sort of hold that down in place. I don't know whether you can really see or not. Yeah, you can kind of see how it's going to start to land. So we're still a little touch high, so we've got a little bit of gapping just on the frames there, but that's fine. That's what the hull planking is going to look roughly like. Nice yellow cedar against the utility is going to be really smart indeed. So I'll be looking forward to getting that on.
So I've done one side. To be honest, I've just done most of this by eye actually. You can do a surprising amount and pretty accurately. You know, I'm just catching the light on this surface, and things like I'm looking to get a sort of nice fair curve coming down here that's kind of pointing towards this frame. I'm also using the heel of the plane on this frame sort of up to this face, so I'm using that to transpose this line on up. And I know I'm pretty close on frame 2 there, so that's good. So I've also got the stem, of course, which is pre-shaped, so that's helping me to follow on that face on up through. So, you know, just by sighting down this visually, you can do a lot just by eye actually. I haven't finished this side yet, so you can see what we sort of start with. And yeah, getting pretty close. You can see there's a little hump somewhere about here. This is a little high. I actually saw it easier from the other way around. So if you follow that line across there, can you see around about there where the clamp is, there's just a slight high spot, and then it kind of flattens out to frame 2. So it's stuff like that I'm looking out for really, just following that edge across, and it should be nice and fair all the way down. So yeah, there's a bit of material still to remove just out of here, just to get this nicely running through, and then that'll probably push a little bit more further forward. But yeah, that's the sort of process I'm following. I'll carry on, do the other side. Okay, so there we go. That's all just shaped by eye. There's a bit more work to do, but I think I'm going to do that once it's bonded in. There's maybe a bit of a lump around here still, but you can see it's just sat up a little bit. We got nice fitment into there. That sort of lines project on from the stem up nicely. It's nicely balanced, which you can see in those lamination lines. And there's my little slither that I've got a bond on. You can see as well that's a little bit one-sided, so this side wants to come off a touch more. But I'll do all that once it's all bonded in and the slither is on. But as far as the keel goes, that's close enough to get that glued in now. Nicely shaped. Okay, so that is the keel shaped and ready to bond into place. In the next video, I'm going to start working on the chines, so I'll be able to get the chine clamp in, and then we'll start looking at the flat sections of the chine as well, which you've seen me cut in a previous video from the plywood layers, so we'll be getting those stacked up. I'm actually going to veneer those on the internal faces with utility as well, so they're going to look quite a smart little assembly, and we'll start getting all this bonded in and moving forwards. Should be able to get a little bit more time on the project now. I know I've said that before, but now that the skiff course is out of the way, I'm really able to push on with the project, so I'm really looking forward to moving Temptress forward. As you might have noticed, the skiffs are right here in my workshop. I'm currently kind of tripping over those, so we're going to be looking to try and move those on and find a new home for them. One of them is going to be at the Southampton Boat Show later on in this year, so if you're coming to the boat show, you'll be able to see both Missile, my little boat there, and also the skiff that we built on the course. So
you'll be able to see that. Plus it's coming up, as I mentioned, in a video soon. So I hope you enjoyed that one on shaping the keel. It's been a little bit of a short week, but that's what I've got done in the last couple of days. I will crack on with the boat and I will catch you in the next video. Hope you've enjoyed it and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.